Past before, but let's rehash some of these ideas. Microsoft back in build 2015 talked about this idea too. That
Yeah, Dennis, there's no video.
much longevity. That is what are called long tail applications. Things you launch on it.
I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
Yeah, there's no video.
Okay.
You seem to be sharing the wrong screen. You're still sharing the your
Okay.
mobile e-commerce.
Let me start over again. This should work. Sorry about that.
Hard to tell the difference. For instance, Instagram have a PWA. So if you go to Instagram.com on your Android phone, assuming it's a modern one, and you log in, you'll be asked if you want to pin this to your start screen or your application screen, and would you like to receive notifications? Once you do that and then you open that app, it looks just like the regular Instagram application. In fact, the scrolling is better than a native app of Android, which tells you a lot. Why does Google, Microsoft see this as the future of app development? All right, I've talked about this more in the past before, but let's rehash some of these ideas. Microsoft back in build 2015 talked about this idea too, that applications don't have much longevity. That is what are called long tail applications. Things you launch on occasion. So I'm not talking about your email app necessarily or things you launch every day or heavy things like games. What I mean is, like, say you want to order flowers or you want to call up an Uber. These are nice to have as applications, but you're not using them all the time. It gets real expensive to maintain these apps. Now, a company like Uber is really not starved for cash, so let's put them aside. But let's talk about maybe your local diner or your local car shop. Now, on average, it probably takes around $45,000 to $50,000 if you want to hire a dedicated app developer. Now, some work on a partial fee per month to maintain the app, while others just require a flat-out salary. $50,000 a year is not cheap at all, especially if you're a local diner. In fact, that's kind of cost prohibitive. So it's very expensive for small organizations to make an application, especially if they want to put it on iOS and Android. Remember, most devs still target iOS first, with Android coming second, despite the fact that Android is the larger market share. So this really comes down to an issue of cost. But there's actually a little bit more going on here. For instance, why is Google pushing this? They have a pretty awesome store the last time I checked. Well, it's actually a really good point. Google's business model, though, is actually on the web. It's not really the App Store, nor is it selling Android devices. Android is really about you getting to use Google services and going on the web. If every company created their own native application and it pulls data direct from the site without going through the web, well, that actually hurts Google's bottom line. Don't forget, apps really don't count against web traffic. So Google actually wants this to happen because in using a progressive web application, you're using the web, you're using analytics, you're using their ad stuff. You're getting everything to count against SEO as well, so it shows up in search. So this all benefits Google. They don't really care about the App Store in that sense. What they want are people back on the web. So not only does this extend the life of the World Wide Web, if you want to use a dated term, but it actually gives it more life. It gives it actually a new lease going into 2018, 2019. Now, as to why Microsoft wants it, I think it should be pretty obvious. They have the app gap problem, and this potentially solves that. How will PWAs affect the Microsoft Store? All right, so Microsoft recently talked about this, and it's really interesting. And this is the difference with PWAs. Right now, if you're, say, on an Android device and you open your Chrome browser or even Edge browser and you go to twitter.com, like I said, log in, it'll ask you to pin it to the app screen. The problem there is you can still have the Instagram app installed and then have a PWA installed as well, living side by side. And there's sort of a discoverability issue. Now, I'm not really sure here what Google is going to do or even Apple is going to do regarding PWAs in their stores. What I can tell you is what Microsoft is going to do. They're going to put PWAs directly into the store, and how they do this is through the Universal Windows platform. They basically have a bridge that supports this. So they're taking PWA, wrapping it in the AppX wrapper, putting it into the store, but they also get other features there. For instance, you get live tiles, you can get Cortana, you can get in-app purchases if there were those there. You also get deeper analytics. You get discoverability because the consumer is going to basically launch the App Store, the Microsoft Store. They're going to search for, say, Uber or Twitter, and guess what's going to be there? An application. Now, it's going to be technically PWA, but will the consumer know? No, because there's no Chrome. They're not launching this. It doesn't look like a web browser. It looks like an application. But there's more to this. So how are you going to get PWAs in the store? Do they have to go to each company and go, can we do this? No, they don't. Since these are just websites, all they're doing is putting websites in the store. They don't need their permission. And Microsoft has already said they're going to use a thing called Bing Crawler. They've been looking at PWA sites that are live right now. And if they meet certain standards, they're going to be putting these in the store automatically. So we can expect probably a couple hundred, I don't know, maybe even 1,000 of these things to all of a sudden show up in the store. And then once it gets even more advanced, that is, the quality is there and they get user feedback and this is working well, Bing Crawler will be able to package these things up and put it into the store automatically with no one there. Now, since no money is being transpired here, Microsoft is not making money on ads through these things. It's all just pulling in a website from a company. There's no reason there that a company needs its permission. Twitter is Twitter. If Twitter wanted to deny a PWA on Windows 10, they'd be effectively saying you can't go to twitter.com on your web browser, which would be insane. And so this is the big difference here. Microsoft is treating PWAs as first-class citizens, as they say. They're putting them right in the store. It's going to be right there for users, so without the discoverability problem of having to go to the website, log in, and then pin it to your start screen. It's a very unique thing, and it should be happening for Redstone 4 in the coming weeks. Are there any big-name brand apps out there that are PWAs? And are developers embracing this? So the answer here will surprise you, maybe not, I don't know, but there are a lot of PWAs already out there, including Google Maps. Yes, this already works in Edge on Android. You can pin it to your start screen and have a PWA of Google Maps that uses your location and works just like the app itself. That means in theory, yes, Project Andromeda will have Google Maps, which is really enticing. But there are other ones out there. Starbucks has a preview version. If you go to preview.starbucks.com on your phone, you can see it there and log in and pin that to your start screen, and that is a PWA as well. You also have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Tinder, you have Uber, you have Lyft. You have a bunch of services already out there. Even Pinterest has a PWA. So yes, all the major companies are embracing this because, again, companies hate paying developers. Sorry, they would rather just have a web developer basically make a PWA website and call it a day. I also expect a lot of banks to jump on this because maintaining a banking app is super expensive. There's a lot of security involved. There's a lot of laws in effect that they need to be compliant with. That's one reason why Windows 10 always had an issue with banking apps. They're very expensive to maintain. But what is always maintained? A banking website. In fact, that gets updated even before any iOS and Android app. So if a bank can maintain a PWA website, well, that's a win-win for everybody, including them and their consumers, and yes, eventually Windows 10 users. Does Microsoft have any plans to release any of its apps in PWA form? Our set of questions a little confusing, and I'll tell you why. PWA has to be thought of as first living on the web, but I can tell you of one instance as an example, Outlook.com. So Outlook.com is both an email service that's on the web, but of course there are apps for it. Now, is Microsoft going to take its app and convert it to PWA? No. What they did do, though, was convert Outlook.com into supporting PWA. So again, launch your Android phone up, use Chrome, use Edge, and go to Outlook.com, and now add that to your home screen and relaunch it, and you're going to quickly see it looks just like an Outlook app. It's very impressive. It is full PWA compliant. So Microsoft will take any of their services that live on the web and convert those to PWA. So I imagine OneDrive is there as well, and there are other services. I haven't tried them all, but yes, Microsoft is definitely on board here with making its websites PWA compliant. Does Microsoft Edge even support PWAs yet? All right, so if you're running Windows 10 Fall Creators Update, the answer is no, but don't worry, Redstone 4, which is slated for spring 2018, or actually in a couple weeks, will be supporting PWA right out the door. That's also when Microsoft's going to start putting some of these PWA websites into the store as a test, and as they get feedback, we'll roll out more using that Bing crawler. So yeah, look for it very soon. Now, PWAs, I should explain, is still very new. That's why, for instance, Starbucks has a preview of it, and Twitter has Twitter Lite. So a lot of this stuff is basically in development. Google themselves aren't really launching their PWAs until around mid-2018. So look for this technology to ramp up. And don't forget, it's 1.0. So for instance, the Instagram app does a lot of cool stuff already. You can double tap to like something. It has very good scrolling. But it doesn't do all the things necessarily. You can access even the camera, which is kind of unique. These things are very powerful, but they're not necessarily as powerful as apps, but that will change as PWAs progress and improve over time. And finally, I know one question I'm going to be hearing a lot about is, will Windows Phone support Edge with PWAs? I don't believe so. I don't know what Microsoft's plans are here. I'm doubtful that they're going to actually update Edge on the phone to support PWAs, which is a bit of a shame, but we don't know. They could do it if they want to, but they really are kind of done with phone at this time. Since PWAs are web apps, do developers even need an app store taking a 30% cut? So I touched upon this a little bit earlier. If your website is free to access, it's Outlook.com, it's Uber, it's Twitter, it's Lyft, LinkedIn. There is no cut, right? I mean, if your app is free on the store, Microsoft's not really taking a cut. And I already described earlier how Microsoft's going to put these websites on their store automatically without necessarily asking those companies to do so, because all they're doing is linking to that website after all. So there's no changing of money here, which is why legally they can even do this. So what stores are really good for is what we all know is discoverability. The idea is you want to open up, say, Windows 10 for the first time out of your out-of-box experience. You want to hit that store and be like, I want Uber, or I want my banking app. Type it in and it shows up, you hit install and it downloads. Sure, everybody knows you can just launch the browser and do that, but this is going to be a containerized version of that. And what's really neat about the PWA stuff in the store is technically the app never needs to be updated. Since it's pulling down live data from the store and it can live in a cache offline, all it depends on is that website being updated. So the consumer really wins out here as well too. Finally, how long do you think it will be until PWAs are the standard and not the exception? Making predictions about new technology is always difficult, especially standards, and this is a 1.0 after all, but I expect PWAs to catch on pretty fast. Like I said, I already listed a bunch of major sites that are already supporting it, and technically it hasn't launched yet, at least not in an official capacity. So we are seeing a lot of uptake from developers with this. In fact, I get asked a lot of questions from devs about this topic all the time. I do expect going to 2019, you're going to see a lot of this. Now, what really matters is how the stores basically adopt PWA. So we know Microsoft is going full blast with it, and that's going to be very good for the technology. I'm not sure what Google's policy is going to be here. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about it at Google I/O coming up in May. And I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to put PWAs in their store as well. Moreover, I could see Twitter or Instagram, for instance, basically saying we're going to put our PWAs in the store and replace their current apps with it. In fact, Twitter just announced that they're deprecating their app for Mac OS. Why is that? It's PWA, folks. There is just no point in Twitter making apps for all these platforms. And if you've used a Windows 10 Twitter app, you could probably see where this is going as well. I can also imagine that app being deprecated and replaced instead with Twitter PWA. But I think this technology is going to come very quickly, and there's one reason: it's money. Companies just don't want to pay developers to make and maintain these applications. It's also a platform-neutral system, and it's a win-win for almost everyone involved, except maybe app developers on iOS and Android. In fact, I think this will probably hurt Apple devs the most, because if PWA actually goes into the store for iOS, those devs get paid a lot of money and they're in high demand, and they won't necessarily have as much work. Moreover, Apple would lose a lot of revenue potentially, as they don't necessarily get to cut a lot of those apps either. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, expect PWA to be a big deal in 2018. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into PWAs. If you have more questions, leave them in comments and we'll try to answer them.
Okay. Guy talks fast, doesn't he? Well, my goal here really is to introduce you to the concept. Many of you filled out a survey, for the class, and most did not indicate that they were going to explore mobile app development. And so this is one of the reasons I'm bringing it up, because if you are doing e-commerce and you're selling, you really need to have a mobile app of some kind. And I realize that most of us don't have unlimited funds. So I think using Shopify as a first step, so that you have what's called a responsive website, which basically formats your website to look good on a phone. You may already have that. I just want to make it something that you're aware of and understand the value of it and where it's going. And I think maybe we can connect after we talk to Mo Farhat the next couple days. Maybe we can work something out with him or someone else to maybe help this group figure out how to best take advantage of the move toward mobile commerce. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions, thoughts, and particularly for folks who have not been exposed to this before, I'd like to hear what you have to say, if anything. Okay, Emily, I'm going to pick on you, Emily. Tell me what you think.
So the website I use actually uses the app as well. And I really never had anyone go onto the app, and I've definitely promoted it as you can buy my items through this app. But I agree that I think that using two platforms can get too confusing, and I don't think people will go to both places.
Yeah, is the app that you're talking about, is it separate from your website? It's a separate app?
So it's actually through my website. So I use Wix, and they offer an app that you can download and kind of customize it to your shop. And I've promoted it, and you can also see who goes on your website and who goes on the app, and maybe less than 5% goes on the app.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm going to ask Marcus. Marcus, you're kind of a mobile-centric guy. I wonder what your thoughts are about this.
I'm sorry, I was on the call with a customer while you were talking, so I didn't hear the entire question. But if
I just wonder what you think about mobile, since you're a mobile-first kind of company. Yeah. I'm curious on your thoughts about this.
Yes, I think so. We went mobile first with an app design first before we did mobile web. And looking back on it today versus where we were at 2 years ago, we might should have started with mobile web first, but we had the consumer in mind. So having a consumer-centric approach at the time 2 years ago was, we felt, best suited for a mobile app. But we would have today, if we could go back and do it over. And Pete, who's also on the call, is my technical co-founder. He could also probably chime in on this. We might would have went mobile web first before we went to a complete mobile application.
Yeah, I concur with that. I think that security wise, back when we started, we thought that people would prefer a mobile app. But from what we've seen, most people don't take the time to download it, don't take the time to go to it, and they go to the website for the dealerships that we offer the services through, and so they're there, so they want to go right into their website. And so we've really concentrated now mostly on developing the web app and what's called Angular, which is a way to build it. There are ways to build, like we use what's called React Native. And so what that is that's one language that then will compile down into both apps. So you really only have to manage one source code, which then goes down and creates a mobile app and an iOS app and a Google Play app. And that helps, and that's nice, but they're very expensive. I mean, they're, like you said, $10,000, and yeah, that's the minimum you're going to spend, and you're going to get minimal, functionality out of that. You can easily spend upwards of $100,000 if you really want to have a good working mobile app. And I think that it really depends on what who your customer is and what your target audience is. But for us, I agree with Marcus. I think that we've seen that really people right now are going after the mobile website apps, and you really want to have that progressive app like you had mentioned, where if somebody has it, can go to their website. We figured they'd go to their browser on their desktop and they would use the website. But what we found is a lot of people go to their browser on their mobile phone and still go into the web-based app and not the actual iOS or Android app. And so you got to make sure that the web-based app looks good across all platforms, not just the desktop, but also the mobile, on your mobile phone. And so we're really working on that now and really we're coming out with a version 2 in the next couple of weeks, which will vastly improve on what we've done. But we would have probably, knowing then what we do now, we definitely would have gone after the mobile web-based app rather than the app, the regular mobile app.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask Ashley to comment her experience with mobile, if any.
Yeah, I've never had any experience with any kind of app. I've seen really big businesses use apps, like they have their own app for their shop and everything. I think the way I'm doing it is just like having the link in social medias and stuff, all that to the website. Most people do use their phone. I don't know how beneficial it would be to have an individual app, because Shopify does have it where you can create like your own user account, which kind of saves things there and I guess makes you feel more involved with it. So I feel like maybe that's similar, but I've never really looked into anything more than that.
Okay. Taylor, how about you? You want to comment on this whole subject?
Yeah, I mean, I like think after watching the video and from some conversations we've had outside of the meeting, I think it's really important to have a mobile-friendly website, especially for our business. Just 80% of the people who come on our website come from their cell phones. So we found that it's like, honestly, our website works better on a cell phone, or I think it looks better on the cell phone than it does on the desktop. And we designed it that way on purpose. Like if we had to make a decision between which of these photos, because and anyone else who uses Shopify probably knows what I'm talking about. But like, if you're using a basic theme and you're editing the theme in Shopify, there are some limitations, like depending on the theme that you're using. Like sometimes if you drop a photo in or something, it looks different than on the desktop than it does on a cell phone, just because of like how it crops it and all of that. So when it comes down to those kinds of decisions, we ultimately decide to choose whatever looks best on a cell phone, because that is where our customer is at and that's where we want to best serve them. So for us, I mean, I think the web app makes perfect sense, or just having a mobile friendly website is just kind of essential if you're going to do e-commerce. Oh, Dennis, you're muted.
I was muted. Sorry about that. Taylor, I'm curious about, and this is something I'm just not that familiar with, but do you get like all the statistics about where people are coming from the Shopify platform?
I use Google Analytics for a lot of it.
Okay.
And it's really easy to implement into your website. So you can see even like what browser they're using and being able to tailor your website for whatever browser your customers use the most often.
Fantastic. That's good to know. Okay, well, that's that's about all I have for today. I'm certainly open to any questions that folks might have on this subject. Tomorrow, class is going to start at 11 a.m., not 1. So it's 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. tomorrow with Mo Farhat of Webinopoly. If you do get a chance to go to webinopoly.com and just look around so that you're somewhat familiar with him and what they're doing, and have your questions ready. There may not be time to do like a real custom Q&A for your particular situation. Maybe there will be, but he's going to talk about what market niches he's seeing success, which apps from the Shopify store make the most difference, and just generally give us his view of the Shopify ecosystem, if you will, at this moment in time. So hopefully that will be helpful to all of us. Is there any other questions that anyone has, or ideas, thoughts? Okay, well, as always, if you need to reach me, please reach out. And if you haven't scheduled your one-on-one interview, please be sure to do that so that we can make sure we're aware of where you are, where you'd like to be. We're starting the process of matching up mentors with teams. Some of you have already started on that process. I'd like to get everybody connected as well as I can to help you with your business. So thanks for coming in, and we'll see y'all tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.